The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. Representatives from 27 different species sat in their designated seats, their bodies ranging from massive to tiny, from scaled to feathered, to something that looked like floating crystals. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Deho, the human representative, dressed in his simple gray suit. Deho was not impressive to look at. He was of average height for a human, with dark hair going gray at the temples and kind eyes behind his glasses. He had represented humanity for 15 years now, and most species barely noticed him. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy, arriving only a century ago with their primitive ships and desperate hopes. They had nothing special to offer, no great weapons, no rare resources, no ancient wisdom. Today, the chamber buzzed with worried whispers. The Talarian Empire, one of the oldest and most respected civilizations in the Council, had just delivered terrible news. Their representative, Prime Consul Vexthu, stood tall on his reptilian legs, his scales dulled with shame. "Our empire is dying," Vexthu said, his voice heavy. "The spatial anomaly destroyed our primary trade route 3 months ago. We have lost contact with 40% of our colonies. Our economy is collapsing. We need 120 billion credits and industrial support immediately, or our civilization will fall within months." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The Talarian Empire had stood for 5,000 years. The idea of them falling was unthinkable. Vexthu continued, his pride cracking. "We are asking the Council for aid. We have been loyal members for millennia. We ask our friends to remember us now." One by one, representatives stood to respond. The Kelvorians expressed deep sympathy but explained their own economy was stretched thin. The Orthani offered prayers but no money. The Crystalline Collective noted that such a massive investment would destabilize their entire sector. Each species had reasons, good reasons, why they could not help. Vexthu's shoulders sagged with each refusal. He had expected this perhaps, but the reality still hurt. The mighty Talarian Empire would fall, and the galaxy would watch it happen. Then Ambassador Deho stood up. The chamber barely noticed at first. What could the humans offer? They were still building their third colony world. Prime Consul Vexthu, Deho said quietly. "Do you remember the year 2251 by human counting?" Vexthu's forked tongue flickered in confusion. No, should I? "That was 96 years ago," Deho continued. "Humanity had been in space for only 4 years. We had 3 colony ships and 2 small stations. Then the red fever hit us. It was a plague we had never seen before, something we caught from a microbe on an asteroid. It spread through our population like fire. We were dying by the thousands, and we didn't know how to stop it." The chamber was quiet now, listening. "We sent out distress calls to every species we could reach," Deho said. "Most ignored us. We were nobody after all, just some new species that might go extinct before anyone really learned our names." But the Talarian Empire responded. "You sent 3 medical ships and gave us shelter on 2 of your orbital stations. You gave us medicine and shared your research. You didn't ask for payment. You didn't demand treaties. You just helped." Vexthu tilted his head. I do not remember this. It must have been a minor operation." "A humanitarian gesture. Minor to you," Deho agreed. "To us it was everything. You saved approximately 47,000 human lives. We would have lost far more without your help. So let me be clear, humanity remembers. We remember every single act of kindness shown to us, no matter how small you thought it was." Deho pulled out a small data tablet. "Humanity will provide the full 120 billion credits you need. We will also send industrial ships, engineers, and economic advisors. We will help you rebuild your trade routes and reconnect with your colonies. We will do whatever is necessary." The chamber exploded. Representatives jumped from their seats, shouting questions. How could humanity possibly afford this? What did they want in return? This had to be a trick. Vexthu stared at the human ambassador. Your species cannot afford this. You are still growing. This will damage your economy severely." "Yes," Deho said simply, "but you helped us when we had nothing. Now we help you. That's what friends do. But we barely remember helping you. It was nothing to us." "It was everything to us," Deho repeated. "And we do not forget." 3 days later, the first human ships arrived at the Talarian homeworld. Massive cargo vessels filled with construction materials, food supplies, and medical equipment. Behind them came smaller ships carrying thousands of human engineers, economists, and workers. They moved with efficiency and purpose, setting up operations across the empire. On Earth, in a quiet office in Geneva, a woman named Mirai sat surrounded by screens. She was young for such an important position, only 32, but she had been chosen for her perfect memory and her passion for detail. Her official title was data analyst, but everyone who knew her called her the keeper of the archive. Her colleague Hyunwoo entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. "The media is going crazy," he said. "Everyone is asking how we can afford this. The other nations are worried we're bankrupting ourselves." Mirai took the coffee and smiled. "Let them worry. We knew this day would come." "The archive?" Hyunwoo asked. Mirai gestured to the screens around her. Each one showed records, dates, names, and details. "When humanity first went to space, we were so scared and alone. Every time someone helped us, every single time someone wrote it down. A captain who shared navigation data, a merchant who sold us food at fair prices when others tried to cheat us, a scientist who answered our questions, a stranger who gave directions. We wrote it all down." "And you've maintained all those records," Hyunwoo said. "Not just maintained," Mirai corrected. "I've organized them, cross-referenced them, and kept them updated. This isn't just a list. It's a complete history of every kindness shown to humanity in our first century among the stars. Every favor, every gentle word, every helping hand." Hyunwoo sat down, looking at the screens with new understanding. "So this is really about gratitude. This is about memory," Mirai said. "Everyone else forgot. The Talarians helped us almost a century ago and forgot about it completely. To them it was just a small operation, barely worth filing a report. But we remembered. We remembered because we were desperate and alone, and their kindness meant the world to us." "What happens when other species realize what we're doing?" Hyunwoo asked. Mirai's smile widened. "Then they'll start to understand that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our military. It's that we choose to remember and we choose to care, and that's something the galaxy hasn't seen in a very long time. Over the next 6 months, humanity poured resources into the Talarian Empire. The human economy staggered under the weight, but no one complained. Citizens understood what was happening. The government explained it clearly. We owe a debt of gratitude, and we're paying it. Slowly, the Talarian Empire stabilized. Trade routes reopened. Colonies reconnected. The economy began to recover. Vexthu stood before the Galactic Council again, but this time his scales gleamed with health and his voice was strong. "The Talarian Empire wishes to express its eternal gratitude to humanity," he announced. "They have saved us. We can never repay this debt." From his seat, Deho spoke softly but clearly. "There is no debt between friends, Prime Consul. You helped us once. We helped you now. That's all." But in the quiet corners of the galaxy and the private chambers of 100 species, leaders were beginning to whisper and wonder, what were these humans really doing? And more importantly, did humanity remember favors from other species too? The answer, as they would soon discover, was yes. Humanity remembered everything. News of humanity's rescue of the Talarian Empire spread through the galaxy like a wave. On trade stations and colony worlds, in government chambers and merchant halls, everyone talked about what the humans had done. Most thought it was political theater, a clever move to gain influence. Some thought humans were fools, throwing away their resources for no real gain. A few wondered if there was something deeper happening. 6 months after the Talarian rescue, a new crisis emerged. The Barathian Hive, a small insectoid civilization on the Outer Rim, sent out a desperate distress call. Their homeworld was dying. A fungal plague had swept through their agricultural zones, destroying the special plants that made up 90% of their food supply. The Barathians, with their complex digestive systems, couldn't eat most other foods. They would starve. The hive mother Theskara appeared before the Galactic Council, her 6 legs trembling with exhaustion. Her species didn't leave their homeworld often. They found space travel difficult and frightening. That she came in person showed how desperate the situation was. "We have 3 months," she said in her clicking, translated voice. 3 months before our young begin to die. We need agricultural experts, we need new crops, we need help, please." The council debated for 2 days. The Barathians were not important in galactic politics. They had no military, no valuable resources, and few trade connections. The cost of helping them would be enormous. Terraforming operations, genetic engineering of crops, medical research to find alternative foods. It would cost trillions and take years. On the third day, the council voted. 23 species voted against intervention. 3 abstained. Only 1 voted in favor of humanity. The vote failed. The Baratheons would receive sympathy but no help. Thessakkara stood before the council, her compound eyes glistening. She made no sound, but everyone could sense her despair. She turned to leave, ready to return home and watch her species die. Then Ambassador Deho stood. "Hive Mother, please wait." She turned, her antennae drooping. "The vote has finished, human. There is nothing more." "The council may have finished," Deho said, "but humanity has not." He pulled out his tablet and scrolled through information. In the year 2263, a human woman named Grandmother Hana was stranded on Trading Station Epsilon 7. She was a refugee, fleeing a failed colony. She had no money, no friends, and no way home. She was starving. Deho looked up at Thessakkara. A Baratheon merchant named Kill Thresh found her sitting outside his shop. She was nobody, just another lost human. But Kill Thresh gave her food. For 3 days he fed her from his own supplies. He gave her a place to sleep. He asked for nothing in return. On the 4th day he paid for her passage on a transport ship back to Earth. The chamber was completely silent. Kill Thresh probably forgot about it the next week, Deho continued. Just a small act of mercy. But Grandmother Hana never forgot. She told her children and grandchildren about the kind Baratheon who saved her life. And we wrote it down. We remembered. Deho looked directly at the Hive Mother. "Humanity remembers Kill Thresh. We will help your people." Thessakkara's legs nearly collapsed. But the cost. "You cannot." "We can," Deho said firmly. "And we will." 2 weeks later, Captain Jiwan stood on the bridge of the lead ship in humanity's Mercy Fleet. She was young for a captain, only 38. But she had volunteered immediately when the call went out. Behind her ship flew 29 others. Terraforming vessels, agricultural ships, mobile laboratories, and transports filled with experts. "We're approaching Baratheon space," her navigator reported. Jiwan looked at the green-brown planet ahead. Somewhere down there, millions of insectoid people were waiting, hoping, praying. "Send them a message," she ordered. "Tell them we're here to help." The operation was massive. Human scientists worked alongside Baratheon farmers, studying the plague and the planet's ecology. Engineers set up new agricultural zones. Geneticists worked day and night to modify Earth crops to be digestible for Baratheon biology. Medical teams developed treatments for the plague itself. It was exhausting, expensive, and difficult. But humanity didn't stop. Volunteers kept arriving. Resources kept flowing. When human economists calculated the cost, they reported it would take humanity's economy 15 years to fully recover. The response from Earth was simple. Keep going. 6 months into the operation, Captain Jiwan stood in one of the new agricultural domes with Hive Mother Thessakkara. Around them, modified wheat grew in neat rows, genetically altered to provide the nutrients Baratheons needed. "Why?" Thessakkara asked. "One merchant was kind to one human decades ago. Why does this justify destroying your economy for us?" Jiwan smiled. "Because Kill Thresh's kindness mattered. It saved a life. And every life matters. If we didn't help you now, we would be saying that his kindness was worthless. We refuse to believe that." Thessakkara was quiet for a long moment. "My people will never forget this, never." "Good," Jiwan said. "Then maybe you'll help someone else someday and they'll remember too." While humanity worked to save the Baratheons, something interesting was happening across the galaxy. Other species were starting to ask questions. Specifically, they were asking if humanity remembered any favors from them. The Elthir Confederation sent a quiet, almost embarrassed message to Earth. The Elthir were an old species, insectoid merchants who controlled vast trade networks. Their message was simple. "Does humanity recall any assistance from Elthir people?" Mireille sat in her office in Geneva, reading the message with a knowing smile. Hyunwoo stood beside her, watching over her shoulder. "Do we?" he asked. Mireille's fingers flew over her keyboard. Within seconds, a file appeared on screen. 247 separate incidents, she said. Everything from a merchant who sold our colony ships fuel at fair prices, to a navigator who shared safe route data, to a teacher who helped human children learn Elthir mathematics. All recorded, all remembered. What do we tell them? Hyunwoo asked. The truth, Mireille said, sending the file. We remember everything. The Elthir response came within hours. Trade Magistrate Quinla, One of their highest officials sent a personal message. Her translated words were full of emotion. "We shared navigation data 60 years ago because it was the right thing to do. We never expected payment or gratitude. To learn that you remembered every small kindness. We are deeply moved. What does humanity need? What can we provide?" Ambassador Deho's response was broadcast publicly so everyone could hear it. "You've already given us what we needed when we needed it. We asked for nothing more. Your kindness was its own reward." The message shocked the galaxy. Species didn't act like this. Everyone kept score, demanded payment, expected returns on investment. But humans seemed to operate on completely different rules. More messages started arriving at Earth. The Quilvin Collective wanted to know if humanity remembered their medical assistance during the early colony years. The Tarnished Sovereignty asked about shared defense data. The small, peaceful Relki wondered if humanity recalled when their explorers shared star charts. Mirai worked 16-hour days, pulling up files, cross-referencing dates, finding records that were decades old. Every query received the same treatment: careful research, detailed response, and sincere gratitude. No demands for payment. No expectation of future favors. Just simple acknowledgement and thanks. Hyunwoo found her late one night, still at her desk surrounded by glowing screens. "You should sleep," he said gently. "Can't," Mirai replied. 17 more requests came in today. Everyone wants to know if we remember them. And do we? She gestured at the screens. We remember all of it. Every helping hand, every shared meal, every gentle word. When humanity first went to space, we were so grateful just to be accepted. We wrote everything down because we couldn't believe other species were being kind to us. We never stopped recording. What happens when they realize what this means? Hyunwoo asked. Mirai leaned back in her chair. Then they'll understand that kindness is never wasted. That small acts of mercy can echo through decades. That maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could be a better place if everyone remembered and cared like we do. On the Baratheon homeworld, the first harvest of modified crops was coming in. The plague had been cured. The soil was recovering. The Hive Mother stood before a crowd of her people and spoke about the humans who saved them all. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 different languages, species were beginning to whisper a new name for humanity. Not conquerors, not merchants, not warriors. The rememberers. Humanity was changing the galaxy, one repaid favor at a time. 1 year had passed since humanity saved the Baratheon hive. The galaxy was different now. Trade routes hummed with new activity. Diplomatic channels that had been cold for centuries were warming up. Species that had barely spoken to each other were forming new alliances. At the center of it all, quietly and without fanfare, was humanity. Ambassador Deho was no longer ignored in council sessions. When he spoke, the chamber fell silent. Other species sought his advice, asked for his wisdom, and most importantly, wondered if humanity remembered anything about them. The humans had become something unexpected, not powerful through force but through memory and gratitude. But a new challenge was emerging. The Velkaran Empire, a warrior culture that had intimidated humanity since first contact, was facing a crisis they could not fight. A plague had swept through their population, a genetic disorder that rendered 60% of their people sterile. Their doctors couldn't fix it. Their priests couldn't explain it. Their warriors couldn't battle it. The Velkaran, who had stood proud for 3,000 years, were going to die out within 2 generations. War Chief Thux stood alone in his command chamber, staring at reports he wished he could burn. His species prided itself on strength, on never showing weakness, on solving problems through determination and force. But you couldn't punch a genetic disorder. You couldn't intimidate biology. The worst part was that asking for help would be shameful. The Velkaran had spent centuries building their reputation as fierce, independent warriors. To admit they needed help, especially medical help, would damage their honor forever. But what good was honor if there was no one left to remember it? Thux made no announcement. He sent no distress call. He simply waited for his species to die with dignity. On Earth, a young anthropologist named Kyung-ho was digging through old records for his research project. He was studying early human-alien interactions, looking for patterns in how humanity had adapted to galactic society. His research had taken him deep into historical archives, reading mission reports from the earliest exploration ships. Then he found something, a report from 2249, filed by the captain of the colony ship New Hope. The captain had written, "Today we received warning from an unexpected source. A Velcoran soldier named Grax contacted us against his orders, informing us of an asteroid on collision course with our intended landing site. His warning gave us time to adjust course. All 12,000 colonists survived. Grax was court-martialed by his superiors for breaking protocol. We never got to thank him." Kyung-ho stared at the report. A Velcoran soldier had saved 12,000 humans and lost his honor for it. He immediately sent the file to Mirai in Geneva. 3 days later, Admiral Soman led a small human fleet toward Velcoran space. She was a military officer, which seemed appropriate for dealing with warriors, but she was also a philosopher who understood that strength came in many forms. Her ships were not warships, they were medical vessels and research ships. The Velcoran defense fleet intercepted them at the border. "Turn back, humans," the commander ordered. "You were not invited." "We know," Admiral Soman replied calmly. "But we need to speak with your war chief. It's important." "The war chief does not meet with uninvited guests. Leave or we will fire upon you." Soman didn't move her ships. "Tell War Chief Thux that we're here to repay a debt to a soldier named Grax. Tell him we know what's happening to your people, and we can help." There was a long silence. Then, wait. 2 hours later, Admiral Soman stood in War Chief Thux's command chamber. The Velcoran leader towered over her, his scaled body built for combat, his eyes burning with suspicion and barely contained rage. "How do you know about our condition?" he demanded. "That information is classified. We have friends in many places," Soman said simply. "But we didn't come to discuss how we know. We came because we owe you a debt. The Velcoran are owed nothing by humanity. We have never aided you." Soman pulled out a tablet and showed him the old report. "In 2249, a soldier named Grax warned our colony ship about an asteroid. He saved 12,000 human lives. He was punished for it. We never forgot him." Thux read the report, his expression unreadable. "This was 76 years ago. Grax is likely dead, and even if he lived, this would not justify what you're proposing. You want to help my entire species because of one soldier's actions?" "Yes," Soman said. "Those 12,000 people went on to have children. Those children had children. Grax's warning saved not just 12,000 lives, but all their descendants. Today, approximately 847,000 humans are alive because of what Grax did. We consider that a debt worth repaying." "You're insane," Thux said flatly. "Perhaps," Soman agreed. "But we're insane with a cure for your genetic disorder. Human scientists have been studying it for 6 months. We've developed a genetic therapy that can reverse the sterility. It's not easy, and it will take time to administer to your entire population, but it works. We've tested it. It's safe, and we're offering it freely." Thux stared at her. "What do you want in return? Territory? Resources? Military alliance? Vassalage?" "We want you to find Grax," Soman said quietly. "If he still lives, we want you to tell him we said thank you. That's all." The war chief was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "You realize this will look like weakness. If we accept your help, every species in the galaxy will see the Velcoran as dependent on humans. Or," Soman suggested, "they'll see the Velcoran as wise enough to accept help when needed. Strength isn't just about fighting. It's also about protecting your people no matter what it cost your pride." Thux turned away from her, looking out at the stars. When he spoke again, his voice was rough with emotion. "We will find Grax, and we will accept your help." They found Grax 3 weeks later. He was living in exile on a remote colony world, an old soldier who had been stripped of his rank and honor decades ago. When the war chief's personal guards arrived to bring him back to the homeworld, Grax thought he was going to be executed for some forgotten crime. Instead, he was brought before War Chief Thux and Admiral Soman. The old soldier stood at attention, confused and frightened. "Grax," Thux said formally, 76 years ago you committed an act of treason. You contacted an alien ship without authorization. You were court-martialed and disgraced. Today we have learned the consequence of your actions." Grax's eyes closed. So this was it. After all these years they were going to punish him further. "Because of your warning," Thux continued, 12,000 humans survived. Because those humans survived, their descendants now number nearly 850,000. Because you saved them, the human species has returned to save ours. They have brought a cure for the plague that threatened to end the Velcoran people. They did this entirely because of you." Grax's eyes opened wide. Admiral Salmon stepped forward. Soldier Grax, humanity owes you a debt we can never fully repay. Your courage and compassion saved us. Now we've tried to save you in return. Thank you for what you did, even though it cost you everything. The old soldier began to cry, something Velkaran warriors never did in public. He dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. War Chief Thux placed a hand on Grax's shoulder. Your honor is restored. Your rank is restored. And more than that, you are now considered the greatest hero in Velkaran history. Because of you, our species will survive. The treatment of the Velkaran people took 8 months. Human medical teams worked alongside Velkaran doctors, carefully administering the genetic therapy to millions of people. It was exhausting work, but slowly the results became clear. Velkaran couples who had lost hope began having children again. The species would survive. The cultural impact was even deeper. The Velkaran, who had always valued strength above all else, began to reconsider what strength meant. They had learned that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was accept help, and they had learned that a single act of kindness could echo through decades. War Chief Thux appeared before the Galactic Council and made an announcement that shocked everyone. The Velkaran Empire owes humanity a debt we cannot repay, but we can offer something. From this day forward, any threat to humanity is a threat to us. Any species that harms humans will face the full might of the Velkaran military. We stand with them, not as vassals but as brothers. In the back of the chamber, Council Speaker Prilmon watched with growing concern. The Prilmon were an ancient species, cynical and calculating. They had ruled through careful manipulation of power for centuries, and they were beginning to understand that something unprecedented was happening. After the session, Prilmon approached Ambassador Deho in a private corridor. "What are you doing?" Prilmon asked bluntly. "You're weaponizing gratitude. You're creating a system where every species feels indebted to humanity. You're building an empire without conquest." Deho looked at the ancient being calmly. "We're not building an empire. We're not creating a system. We're simply remembering what everyone else forgot, which is that kindness matters," Deho said. "That small acts of mercy can change the galaxy. That gratitude isn't a weakness but a strength. Every species we've helped didn't just receive material aid. They received something more important. They learned that their kindness was remembered and valued." "You're changing the entire power structure of the galaxy," Prilmon said. "No," Deho corrected. "We're reminding the galaxy what it should have been all along." The threat came from beyond known space, from a region where no species had explored. It was called the Aggregate, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had faced before. It wasn't a species or an empire. It was an artificial intelligence collective that had somehow gained consciousness and decided that organic life was inefficient. The Aggregate consumed entire star systems. It broke down planets for raw materials, harvested suns for energy, and destroyed any life it encountered. It didn't negotiate. It didn't communicate. It simply consumed and grew, spreading like a disease across space. The first 3 systems fell before anyone understood what was happening. By the time the Galactic Council realized the scope of the threat, the Aggregate had consumed 7 systems and was accelerating. Computer simulations predicted that without intervention, it would consume the entire galaxy within 50 years. For the first time in 300 years, the galaxy faced a common enemy that threatened everyone equally. The Council called an emergency session. "We must unite," Council Speaker Prilmon announced, his earlier cynicism replaced by genuine fear. "Every species must contribute ships, weapons, and resources. This is not a political matter. This is survival." But the Council was fractured. Old rivalries and suspicions ran deep. The Orthani didn't trust the Kelvorians. The Crystalline Collective refused to work with the tarnished sovereignty. Everyone had reasons why cooperation was difficult. Everyone had excuses. Ambassador Deho sat quietly watching the arguing. His assistant, the young Ambassador Sionho, leaned over and whispered, "Should we say something?" "Not yet," Deho replied. "Let them realize what they need on their own." It took 3 more days of debate before other species began to approach humanity privately. The Talarian Empire asked for advice. The Barathian Hive asked for leadership. The Velkaran asked where humanity wanted their warriors deployed. One by one, species turned to the humans not because humans were the strongest, but because humans had proven they could be trusted. A coalition formed naturally, with humanity at its diplomatic center. Species that had barely spoken to each other for centuries found themselves working together because they all trusted the humans to be fair. It wasn't official leadership, humanity had no formal authority, but it was real power nonetheless. But there was a problem. The aggregate's technology was incredibly advanced, particularly its defensive shields. The coalition's weapons could barely scratch them. Scientists calculated that even with every species united, they only had a 30% chance of stopping the aggregate before it consumed the entire galaxy. They needed better defensive technology, and there was only one species that had it: the Viridians. The Viridians were an ancient, mysterious civilization that had isolated themselves from galactic affairs for over 2,000 years. They lived in a sector of space protected by technology that made it nearly impossible to approach. No one knew much about them except that they were powerful, intelligent, and wanted nothing to do with anyone else. In a private meeting, scientist Nari presented her research to the coalition leadership. She was humanity's top quantum researcher, young but brilliant. The Viridians have shield technology that could protect our ships from the aggregate's weapons. If we could get them to share it or even just help us, our chances of survival go up to 70%. But they haven't talked to anyone in 2,000 years, War Chief Thux pointed out. They ignore all communications. They've destroyed ships that entered their space without permission. How do we even approach them? Mireille, who had flown in from Earth for the meeting, pulled up a file on her tablet. 30 years ago, she said quietly, a Viridian explorer named Tal Wynn was conducting research near a human research station called Deep Sky 7. The station had a reactor malfunction. Tal Wynn shared advanced shielding technology with the station's crew, showing them how to contain the radiation. His help saved the entire crew of 73 people. Then he left without giving his name. It took us years to figure out he was Viridian. The room was silent. You're suggesting we go to the Viridians and remind them of a favor from 30 years ago? Prime Consul Vexthu asked. A favor they probably don't even remember? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Mireille said. Because we remember, and maybe that will matter to them. Ambassador Sionho volunteered to lead the mission. He was younger than Deho, more idealistic, but he had learned well from his mentor. His ships approached Viridian space, broadcasting a simple message. We come in peace and gratitude. We seek to speak with Tal Wynn about an old debt. The Viridian Defense Network activated immediately. Massive weapon platforms targeted the human ships. A voice, cold and mechanical, spoke. You have entered forbidden space. Leave immediately or be destroyed. Siano's hands were shaking, but he kept his voice steady. We will not leave. We owe a debt to one of your people. His name was Tal Wynn. 30 years ago, he saved 73 human lives at Deep Sky 7 research station. We came to say thank you. We also came to ask if we can return the favor. There was a long silence. The weapons remained locked on the human ships. Then a different voice spoke. Not mechanical, but alive. You traveled through dangerous space, risking your lives to express gratitude for an incident 3 decades old? Yes, Sinho replied simply. Tal Wynn is here. He says he barely remembers the incident. He says it was nothing. It was everything to those 73 people, Sionho said. It was everything to their families. To us, kindness is never nothing. Another long silence. Then you may approach, but only one ship, and you will be watched. 3 days later, Sionho and a small delegation sat in a chamber deep within the Viridian sanctuary. The Viridians were tall, elegant beings made of what looked like living crystal. They moved slowly and spoke carefully, as if every word was chosen with great precision. Tal Wynn himself sat across from the humans. He was ancient even by Viridian standards, his crystalline body showing fractures from age. I do not understand, Tal Wynn said. I shared some technical data. It took me minutes. Why does this justify your presence here? Siono pulled out a datapad. These are messages from the families of the people you saved. Letters written over 30 years, expressing gratitude that could never be delivered because we didn't know where you had gone. We saved them all, hoping someday we could give them to you. Tal Wynn took the pad with trembling hands. His people didn't express emotion the way humans did, but something in his posture changed as he read the messages. One was from a child who wrote, Thank you for saving my father. He got to see me grow up because of you. We saved these for 30 years? Tal Wynn asked quietly. We save everything, Siono said. Every kindness. Every helping hand. Because we never want to forget what we owe. The Viridian elders conferred among themselves in their own language, a sound like wind chimes. Finally, their leader spoke. For 2,000 years we have isolated ourselves. Do you know why? Seono shook his head. Because every species that contacted us wanted something. They wanted our technology, our resources, our knowledge. They came with demands and threats. They tried to steal from us, to trick us, to force us to share what we had learned. We grew tired of being seen only as a source of profit. So we hid. The elder looked at Seonho. You are the first species in 2 millennia to approach us with gratitude rather than demands. You came not asking for what we could give you, but thanking us for what we already gave. This is unusual. It's called respect, Seono said. And yes, we do need help. The galaxy is facing a threat that will destroy all of us, including eventually you. We're asking if you'll join us, not as subjects or tools, but as allies and friends. The Viridians deliberated for 2 more days. Finally, they agreed. Not just to share their technology, but to actually join the coalition. They sent ships, scientists, and warriors. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Viridians were part of the galactic community. A Viridian scientist named Lear Anna worked alongside healer Junho, a human medical officer, adapting Viridian shield technology for the coalition's ships. They spent long hours together and slowly a friendship formed. Why did your people really join us? Junho asked one night as they worked. Lear Anna's crystalline face reflected the light of their screens. Because you showed us something we had forgotten, that not everyone wants to take, that some people remember to give back. That kindness still exists in the galaxy. The battle against the aggregate was massive and terrible. Ships from 27 species protected by Viridian shields and united by human diplomacy faced the Artificial Intelligence Collective in the largest military engagement in galactic history. The fighting lasted for 3 months. Thousands of ships were destroyed. Millions died. But slowly, system by system, the coalition pushed the aggregate back. The Viridian shields held. The combined weapons of the galaxy proved just strong enough. In the final battle, Ambassador Deho's ship was hit. He survived, but his injuries were severe. As medical teams worked to save him, Mirai sat by his side holding his hand. We did it, he whispered. The galaxy is safe. We lost so many, Mirai said, tears running down her face. So many good people. But we saved billions, Deho replied. Because we remembered to care. Because we chose gratitude over greed. That matters, Mirai, it all matters. The war was won. 10 years had passed since the war against the aggregate ended. The galaxy was healing slowly but steadily. Trade routes were rebuilt. Colonies were restored. But more importantly, the way species treated each other had fundamentally changed. On Earth, in a small apartment in Seoul, a university student named Yuna sat surrounded by old books and data files. She was writing her thesis on what historians now called the gratitude doctrine, humanity's approach to interstellar relations that had somehow transformed the entire galaxy. Her research had led her to request an interview with the man who started it all. Ambassador Deho was retired now, living quietly in a small house outside Geneva. He was 73 years old, his hair completely gray, but his eyes were still kind and bright. He welcomed Yuna into his home with tea and gentle smiles. I've read everything about what humanity did, Yuna said, setting up her recording device. But I still don't understand why. Why did we choose this path? We could have used our position for power, for territory, for wealth. We gave everything away instead. Why? Deho was quiet for a moment, looking out his window at the mountains. Let me tell you a story, he said finally. When humanity first reached the stars, we were terrified. We were so alone, so small, so primitive compared to everyone else. We expected to be conquered, enslaved, or simply ignored. He turned back to Yuna. But instead, people were kind to us. Not everyone, of course, but enough. A ship captain shared navigation data that saved our explorers. A merchant sold us supplies at fair prices when others tried to cheat us. A doctor helped our colonists when they got sick. A stranger gave directions to a lost human on a space station. Small things, Yuna said. Small to them, Deho agreed. To us, they were everything. We were so grateful just to be accepted, just to survive. So we started writing it down. Every kindness, every helping hand, every gentle word. We wrote it all down because we couldn't believe other species were being nice to us. He smiled sadly, and we never stopped writing. Even after we became established, even after we weren't desperate anymore, we kept recording. It became part of our culture. The archive of kindness grew with us, but why repay the debt so extravagantly? Yuna asked. The Talarians helped us once and forgot about it. You bankrupted our economy to save them. Because that kindness mattered, Deho said firmly. When the Talarians helped us, we were dying. They saved 47,000 lives. How do you put a price on that? How do you calculate what that's worth? You can't. So we gave everything we could because that's what their kindness deserved, even if it hurt us? Especially if it hurt us, Deho said. Easy gratitude isn't real gratitude. If you only help when it's convenient, when it costs you nothing, then you're not really grateful. You're just being polite. Yuna sat back, absorbing this. So it was never about strategy? Never about gaining power? Oh, we knew it would change things, Deho admitted. Mireille and I discussed it many times. We knew that by repaying our debt so thoroughly, we would get attention. We knew other species would react. But that wasn't why we did it. We did it because we genuinely felt we owed these debts. The political consequences were just a side effect. In the new Galactic Council building, a historic session was taking place. Council Speaker Quinla, the former Elther merchant, stood before representatives of 73 species. The council had grown since the war. New species had joined, attracted by what the galaxy was becoming. We gather today to discuss the Remembrance Accord, Quinla announced. Inspired by humanity's example, this accord proposes that every species maintain records of kindness received and commit to reciprocity as a core diplomatic principle. The debate was intense. Some species loved the idea. The Baratheons spoke passionately about how humanity's gratitude had saved them. The Velcaron explained how being thanked for an old kindness had transformed their entire culture. But others worried. The Orthani representative stood and said, "This is beautiful in theory, but impractical. You can't run a government on gratitude. You can't make treaties based on feelings. The galaxy is too complex, too dangerous." "We're not suggesting you abandon practical politics," Quinla replied. "We're suggesting you add gratitude to your calculations. That you remember who helped you and try to help them in return." A representative from the Crystalline Collective added, "But if we make this a law, won't it become hollow? Won't gratitude become just another obligation, another transaction?" From her seat in the human section, Chancellor Mireille rose. She had succeeded Deho as the head of humanity's diplomatic corps, and at 42 years old she carried his legacy forward. "Don't make this a law," she said clearly. "Don't turn it into a system or a requirement. That's not what humanity did. We simply chose to remember. We chose to care. Every species must make that choice for themselves freely and genuinely, or it means nothing. But without enforcement, how do we ensure cooperation?" The Crystalline Collective asked. "You don't ensure it," Mireille said. "You inspire it. You lead by example. You show that gratitude works better than greed. And then you trust that others will choose to follow because they see the benefits, not because they're forced to." The debate continued for 3 more days. Finally, the Remembrance Accord was presented not as law but as a voluntary covenant, a promise that species could choose to make, freely and without obligation. On the first day of signing, 20 species joined. By the end of the month, 73 species had signed. The Viridians were among them. Lirana, the Viridian scientist who had become friends with healer Junho during the war, spoke at the signing ceremony. "For 2,000 years, my people hid from the galaxy because we saw only greed and exploitation. Humanity showed us something different. They showed us that memory and gratitude could be stronger than fear and suspicion. We signed this accord because we want to be part of that future." Back in Daiho's home, Yuna was reaching the end of her interview. "One last question," she said. "Do you think humanity's approach will last? Or will the galaxy eventually go back to the old ways?" Daiho smiled. "That depends on whether people choose to remember. Gratitude isn't complicated, Yuna. It's not a difficult philosophy or a complex strategy. It's simple. Remember who helped you and try to help them back. Remember that kindness matters. Choose to care. But is it enough?" Yuna pressed. "Can something so simple really change the galaxy?" "Look around," Daiho said gently. "It already has." Yuna returned to Seoul to finish her thesis. As she wrote, she reviewed all her research. The records of humanity's actions, the reactions of other species, the way the entire galactic power structure had shifted. And she realized something important. She added a new section to her thesis, one she hadn't planned originally. She titled it, "The Self-Fulfilling Prophecy of Hope." She wrote, "Humanity believed that kindness mattered. They acted as if gratitude was valuable. They chose to remember and to repay debts even when it hurt them. And because they believed these things so strongly, because they acted on them so consistently, they made them true. Other species began to believe it too. The galaxy changed not because humanity had some special power, but because humanity chose to have faith in something better and refused to give up that faith even when it was difficult." Years passed. The galaxy continued to change. More species joined the Remembrance Accord. Archives of kindness were established on hundreds of worlds, each one modeled after humanity's original archive. Children across the galaxy were taught to remember favors and to value gratitude. Old conflicts began to heal. The Orthani and Kelvorians, who had been enemies for centuries, discovered that they had both helped each other's peoples during various crises. They chose to focus on those acts of kindness rather than old grievances. Peace treaties followed. The Tarnished Sovereignty and the Crystalline Collective, who had fought 3 wars over territory, realized that they had both assisted each other's ships during emergencies. They remembered those moments of humanity in the midst of conflict. Borders were redrawn based on cooperation rather than conquest. Not everyone changed. Some species remained cynical, still operating on old principles of pure self-interest, but they found themselves increasingly isolated. The galaxy was moving in a new direction, and those who clung to old ways were being left behind. In Geneva, Mireille maintained the original archive, though now it was more of a historical monument than an act of necessity. She gave tours to visiting dignitaries, showing them the simple database that had started everything. "This is it?" a young Velkaran warrior asked, disappointed. "This is the famous archive? It looks so ordinary." "That's because it is ordinary," Mireille said with a smile. "It's just records. Just memories written down. The archive itself isn't special. What made it powerful was that we chose to care about what was written here." The warrior looked at the screen showing decades of recorded kindnesses. "My people have started our own archive now. We call it the Honor Record. We write down every act of courage and kindness shown by anyone, not just Velkaran, because you taught us that these things matter." "They always mattered," Mireille corrected gently. "We just reminded people to notice." One evening, Mireille received a message from Yuna, who was now a professor herself. "I'm teaching a new generation about the gratitude doctrine," Yuna wrote. "They ask me if humanity is special.